Hey everybody, welcome back to your free TV, TGIF. It is Friday, December 19th, 2025, and this is, of course, the last Friday before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone out there, and wow, the news. So I'm just going to jump right in here with my disclaimer. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, not to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice. Further disclaimers in the description below. Okay, I'm so glad to be back with you. It is quite the Friday after this very strange events, right, that we're going through constantly. And so I'll just jump in. I always start by saying thank you to everyone supporting the channel. You make it happen, and so appreciative of that. Okay, let's just jump right in here. So we have, I'll just address, of course, we're not at war with Venezuela yet. And Trump's speech was certainly not about that the other night, his address to the nation. However, from hearing from people who are actually at the border there in Venezuela, Oscar Bloom Ramirez, who does the great work with Ben Bergquam on everything that has been the migration invasion, is down there now interviewing Venezuelans, all of them hoping and praying and wishing for an end to the Maduro regime. And of course, us hoping and praying and wishing for occupying all the evidence we need to successfully destroy the election stealing apparatus of Venezuela plus the narco state. Anywho's, moving on from there, we have this incredibly strange situation with the Brown shooter and the killer of the MIT professor, and apparently him killing himself. And we watch this very strange and bizarre record speech or just answering questions of the U.S. attorney out of Massachusetts last night out of Boston, who just kind of seemed like she rolled out from like watching some sort of Netflix binge to come and do this presser. And not an insult there, but it got so strange that she was laughing during it. There was all kinds of just very strange behavior on her part in her recounting of what they did and didn't know. And all of the comic relief that just kept creeping in there was quite bizarre. And so we're meant to believe that this person, Claudio Neves Valente, was the shooter of both Ella Cook and the Azerbi or Uzbeki student at Brown, and injuring all the others. And interesting, I haven't heard Ella Cook's name mentioned at TPUSA at all since it began, and that's a whole other issue we'll get into. But you can watch the the America Fest. America Fest has started, AmFest has started in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is watchable on a Turning Point Action channel on Rumble. You can watch the live stream there. I think Steve Bannon will be talking tonight. And of course, last night was kind of a barn burner with Tucker Carlson versus Ben Shapiro and all of that, with Erica Kirk opening it all. But back here to this at hand. So what is so interesting about all of this, the sequence of events, the strange combo of the murder of Ella Cook specifically looked like a direct assassination. And then supposedly this man who apparently knew the MIT professor from, they had gone to college together in their common studies of nuclear science and engineering in in Portugal. Okay, so they both come from the same past, and then the shooter had supposedly gone to Brown University for a couple of years and dropped out here in this country, not as a legal citizen, but supposedly on some kind of permanent visa, which kind of screams to me of some sort of possible intelligence connection here. And I'm just putting that out there for entertainment purposes only, because it is all so strange, right? So we get the early arrest of a suspect, okay? And when you look at the police chief, the Keystone Cop situation of Providence, Rhode Island, You get the very bizarre, um, what the police chief had said when asked specifically of why they released the first suspect was that we had to release him. Once we found out who he was, we had to release him with very little, nothing else, okay, added to that. But that is like boing boing. It kind of sparks the, when we found out who he was, we had to release him. Okay, interesting. Still not revealed. And then we get this guy dead in Salem, New Hampshire at a storage unit. And it's all, what I find very interesting about it all that I'm going to jump into now is that, as I had said in my last video, when we have the MIT professor who ran the largest laboratories basically in the US at MIT, the professor Nuno Gomez Loureiro, 47 years old, head of the Nuclear Sciences and Engineering Department, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, okay, that has, it's the largest lab at MIT with huge staff, 250 staff and researchers, 250,000 square feet of lab space, and had been heading the lab since 2022. Well, what's very interesting about that, that I'm going to get into here is that the same day that this shooter ends up dead in New Hampshire, and knew this guy, the professor who he supposedly also killed, we get this announcement. I mean, coinky dinky timing. I mean, just all very bizarre. But I have to put it out there. And of course, President Trump will be in Rocky Mount, North Carolina tonight, and the details of what he'll be speaking about in this rally have not been revealed, although it's said to be some economic, of course, points, and supporting Michael Whatley for Senate there, and Rocky Mount being part of the area devastated by the North Carolina weather weapon assault, right, on two different times, right, Helene and then Debbie. And now there's going to be this announcement there tonight. So it'll be interesting to hear what it is. And also interesting that we get the legendary NASCAR racer, Biffle, right? We get Greg Biffle, his wife and child Ryder, named Ryder, all die in this plane that blows up, his own private jet, that this NASCAR driver, kind of legend, his plane explodes in North Carolina as it's taking off and then trying to land after they understand there's a problem, and explodes before the landing. And this man, interestingly, was huge in helicopter rescue during the weather weapons there attack in North Carolina. And helicopter rescues, huge in flood relief there. So that just seems a very odd situation as well. Other people, I believe 3 other unrelated people were on that plane, or at least 2, and I think one was named Craig Wadsworth, I believe, if I'm getting that correct. That's an interesting, strange thing as well. And so, but this seems very strange. And this has to do with the fact that the day that we, a few days after the MIT professor in charge of fusion technology, nuclear fusion, which could be the free energy for everybody that they've been suppressing for 50 years. It supposedly had to do with what Kennedy was going to be talking about the day he was murdered in Dallas. This is JFK, okay, was going to supposedly meet with somebody, top scientist, dark journalist always talks about it, to talk about nuclear fusion. This has been going on for a very long time, this suppression of nuclear fusion, and how it basically mimics the activity of the sun. And it's a very clean energy with very little radioactive content, very little waste, uses very little water compared to the AI data centers, which use a gazillion gallons of water. But what's interesting is it's just one of, it could be the technology that frees us all, okay? And it should be, okay? Because humanity is enslaved through energy, okay? Our own energy stolen, but the energy costs that they impose upon us in order to succeed or progress in life in society, in culture, in everything. And of course, why the Rothschilds and others, now BlackRock, all of them buying up and owning all the utilities, et cetera. And so what is very interesting here is we see this announcement coming out that Trump's his TMTJ, which is the Trump Media and Technology Group, is now doing a merger with TAE Fusion Energy Corporation. Okay, TAE Nuclear Fusion Energy Corporation. And this is very interesting. The other people who back TAE is Google and Chevron. And so this is a $6 billion deal. And basically, this nuclear fusion company is planning to build their modules there, their nuclear fusion systems that can be very small, by the way, and extremely effective. But this is primarily supposedly going to be the supplier for nuclear fusion energy for the AI data centers. The CEO of that company is Michel Bindebauer. Okay, they utilize neutral beam technology to replicate the energy of the sun, and this just happened yesterday. The announcement of it, and it's kind of a closed. It's like a full stock ownership, okay, of this company with Google and Chevron. So very, very, very interesting coincidence of timing with the murder of that central, I would say, one of the chief nuclear fusion scientists probably in the world out of MIT with those massive labs. But where it gets even more interesting is that laboratory at MIT is also is connected to a different nuclear fusion power plant that also was announced, I think, a year ago today, that is Commonwealth Fusion Systems, talking about Massachusetts, talking about the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Commonwealth Fusion Systems, CFS, which is MIT based. The technology out of there would have come from this man's lab, I'm assuming, saying he's been in charge of it since 2022. And they call it the ARC to stand for Affordable, Robust, and Compact. And this was to be built at the James River Industrial Park in Chesterfield County, Virginia, to revolutionize clean energy. And the CEO of that, CFS, is Bob Mungard. And so the fuel for fusion is isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium from seawater, and tritium, okay, usually coming from lithium. And so very, very interesting as we look at that. I mean, to me, that is just strange coincidence of timing, at least, right? There's also apparently another fusion plant that was announced in September called Type 1 Energy Group in Clinton, Tennessee, at the former Bull Run fossil plant site. Okay, that was just announced in September that we're going to be doing test runs there, in-house, fusion testing, and come up with what they would be calling Infinity 2, the commercial plant in their second phase. And of course, when they say infinity, that is because nuclear fusion can present limitless and what should be free energy. And so it is very interesting to see. So I'm curious to see what might be being announced at Rocky Mount, North Carolina today. And there's a lot to dig into that, but I won't do it today. Let's see what happens. And just how all these weather weapons, continuously causing this flooding. We're still praying for the people of Washington State and what's going on there with the massive flooding. Very little, really talked about it to do with, help, or we know that the national emergency was declared, et cetera. So that all, I think, is kind of like pretty astounding, all the timing on all of it. And, the strangeness, of course, of the homeless man with the Reddit account who lives in the basement of the part of Brown, homeless but lives in the basement, of Brown, where the shootings happened of the murder of Ella Cook and the other student and the woundings of others, where he had he had put on his Reddit account this tip of meeting up with this man, identifying the car, meaning Claudio Neves Valente, supposedly, and nothing was done about it, okay, until yesterday, even though they knew about it, didn't act on it. And again, the strange wording of the police chief in Rhode Island, who said, we had him in custody, but once we found out who he was, we had to let him go. It's all very interesting. I'll just leave it there at that for now. Okay. These, timings and coincidences, they all need to be put out there, I believe. So moving on from there, I'm going to get into Russia here real quick. Although I will also mention real quick the America Act announced by Blackburn, Marsha Blackburn. Is she out of Tennessee? Because that would make sense. but interesting. The America Act, we see that it's going to be basically it's an act to kind of do a federal law on AI. Okay, again, it is this attempt to control the regulation of AI within the federal government, and this one is supposedly checking a lot more boxes than just, hey, let the tech groups that own it all just do whatever they want. Well, this one's covering a lot of boxes, and I'm not going to dig into it for you here, but I'm going to link it below so you can go ahead and read sort of the what it's covering. And you get Joe Allen, who wrote Dark Ion. He's a huge, very hawkish on AI, very, AI is the threat to humanity kind of guy. But basically, he's calling this blast shields to stop AI tech corporations from unilaterally controlling the development and rollout nationwide, and that it is called one federal rule. And the America Act stands for Advancing Machine Intelligence by Eliminating Regulatory Interstate Chaos Act. So it's planning to cover a lot of the concerns that people are bringing up, yet it still falls short, of course, of letting states be more in control of what's going on with AI data centers. Although supposedly it puts in place a lot of stopgaps, a lot of slowing down of AI data centers just coming in covertly. A lot to do with transparency around that AI data centers that plan to come in and do hostile takeovers of communities, as they have been doing, that they have to announce in advance, that there has to be, agreement amongst the population there, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll see what comes out of it. I have to dig into it, and I haven't had time to do that yet, but we'll be getting into it. And so I wanted to also mention, because I did talk about it in my last video, about in Japan, the yen carry trade being over. Okay, the yen carry trade, which is, of course, they had 0% interest in yen. Okay, so you could go and buy. They could go, any BlackRock or whatever just goes and borrows at 0 interest yen out of Japan, and then can go and use that money interest free to go and do their hostile takeovers, go and do whatever it is they want, buy up massive tons of trillions in real estate, et cetera, et cetera. But now that's over, and it's going to be massive. It's now increased to 0.75, and the new conservative prime minister in Japan is saying they're going to be raising those rates, which, it's going to be interesting how that rolls out, as we're seeing Europe, Japan, all these other nations kind of getting into this fiat situation. But this leverage debt situation is what I mean to say. But this global growth that's been going on steroids, using this yen carry trade, can be up to $20 trillion worth of global growth that is based on this. So the increase in that will be hugely detrimental to all of these huge globalist companies, Vanguard, BlackRock, et cetera, but also just could create a lot of havoc, right? And when you look at it as leveraged, that 20 trillion, if it was leveraged, that becomes 200 trillion in derivative debt leverage. And so this could be just really, really massive, especially in real estate, property, and commercial property for sure, and then real estate. And there's been over $1 trillion in real estate scarfed up using that carry trade. And so, BlackRock, we have Gail Slater, the antitrust person at the DOJ, who is fantastic, who last month, I haven't even had time to report about it, and I don't have the name in front of me of the company that she broke up and basically made them to not be able to falsely and fakely inflate rental rates across the nation. They own over 1 million rental properties, and she put a stop to that. And so that will hopefully be rippling down through people who rent in the next 6 months, to show the rents not increasing and going down. And that is huge. So very important to just point that out. But going into Russia here, we have Putin coming out and saying, sure, yeah, let's make it happen. Let's make the Ukraine war end, saying more favorably in the last couple of days, as we've got Kirill Dmitriev, who's sort of the Besant of Russia, and other Russian negotiators coming to Miami. Maybe they're all getting together at Zelensky's massive mansion there. But he's there meeting with Witkoff's team and others to discuss what's going to happen, because Russia has now gone. It's interesting, in the EU, we see the interior minister out of there at the head at the EU in Brussels, taking down the Ukraine flag that's been going for the last many years. So very interesting to see that happening. But Russia is now suing Euroclear for damages for failure to protect their assets. But they've expanded huge arbitrage. The huge arbitration expanding after there was the fail yesterday for the EU Commission to get the approval bid for using those assets as perpetual collateral, to just be holding them indefinitely for these reparations loan to Kiev, meaning to create massive arms manufacturing in Ukraine, and to create this World War III army infrastructure. And so this is huge. So Russia has expanded their lawsuit to include the other banks in Europe now that are holding the assets out of the 300 billion that they have there. So very interesting, because now what this leaves with the EU Commission and von der Leyen, as they've already imposed this through taking away unanimous voting through emergency measures of Article 122, now they have their only other option is to try to raise this $90 billion, only 90 billion, right, for what is it's going to be raised through forcing taxpayers of, the larger players in the EU, the larger nations, that they're going to be forcing taxpayers who are already, their economies are just imploding and dying, to get $90 billion for their World War III project. So I wanted to update you on that, and that's what we know so far about that. So very, very interesting there as well. And I'm keeping it short today because it's all I can do. But I will just, I think, end on a couple tidbits. We have the Minnesota money laundering cabal, Somali-based, but them being the proxies for, I'm sure, the big winners that are getting the most money out of this. They're looking at now up to $50 billion out of Minnesota money laundering, out of taxpayer dollar money. So that is increasing by the day, and very, very, very bizarre. Not bizarre, very, very disgusting. Okay, that's what's going on. But that's like a drop in the bucket. Okay, just think of Podesta's $240 billion that just was stolen directly as he was the climate czar on his way out in those last few months. In those James O'Keefe OMG videos, people who had been working in those offices said it was just like throwing gold bars off the Titanic. They were just getting rid of money as fast as possible. Yeah, so that's why we're in the position we're in. And when people look at Trump's speech the other night and he had to jam into 22 minutes his whole economic revival and plans for the future, how anybody could say that that wasn't, a very important speech and very, very clear to show the building blocks and the machinations to come back from that level of thievery and just total corruption and destruction of the United States. I don't know. And so I think I'll end on this. I think, as you know, we saw last night with Turning Point Action and the AmFest ramping, launching, and they started with Erica Kirk, and then they had Ben Shapiro coming out to attack Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson as their first speaker. It was just so bizarre. And I guess he gets first plug because of, probably the money involved. But you saw this sort of him being followed up by Russell Brand, who came out really strong on, Christ and basically talking about, we don't go for this divide and conquer and enemies situation. And then Tucker coming out as well to say basically there's no civil war if we don't play up to it. But what was very interesting was that right as TPUSA was or AmFest was kicking off in Phoenix, you just had like minutes before that, of course, Candace Owens, who was called out so much by Ben Shapiro, had just ended this incredible broadcast, I'll link it below, with a man named Mitch, who was a former special ops in training in special ops at Fort Huachuca in Arizona in Tucson. And his whole story is really intense. I won't get into it. You can watch the video. But he basically has been plagued for 25 years plus, because he was part of uncovering a tunnel, I believe adjacent to Fort Huachuca, that was trafficking massive amounts of cocaine, under the Mexican border into Tucson. Remember, you can kind of spit across the border from Tucson practically. But and that there was huge tunnels and money and all of it, and he was involved in destroying it. But somehow he got wrapped up in some kind of something that set him up on a lifelong journey of getting basically scapegoated for what happened there. And as God works in very strange ways, in very miraculous, incredible ways, he had this long gag order on him that lasted, I believe, 25 years, and it had just ended in May. And so he had planned to go back to Fort Huachuca and get his documents from the time period to help him, because he's constantly being sued and attacked and everything else, and chased by the cartels, et cetera, et cetera. And he ends up being there on September 8th at a hotel nearby, where he claims that he saw on the evening of September 8th and then again on September 9th at the base at Fort Huachuca, Erica Kirk there, and also a Congress member from Las Vegas, Nevada, and other large players that are some of the ones that Candace Owens have been talking about. So it's all just like, what? So intense. And that literally, she had just finished that video in his testimony live, and then AmFest started. So that's all very intense indeed, and kind of mind-blowing. So I'm not going to dig further into it. I'm going to leave it to you until I see you again, which won't be that far from now. I believe I will see you before Christmas, which is fantastic. And I really hope that after this long, I hope you can enjoy some of the AmFest speeches that happen over the weekend, but more so your family. A lot of people start kicking off those holiday events over this weekend, and I hope that yours are spectacular. And if you found something useful or new in this video, and you might want to think of supporting You Are Free TV into 2026, this channel is a labor of love. It is massively underwater, shall we say. It's upside down in the time going in versus the support coming back. And I know people do all the best that they can. But in 2026, I'm really hoping to be able to do more videos, and I just need your support to do that. And there's a ways to do so below. If you want to give me a little Christmas atta-girl, that would be fantastic. Plus, of course, my fantastic sponsor, which is c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use code YAFTV for 10% off. Those holiday sales are still going strong and great, and you can get situated for your 2026 to be a powerhouse of cellular energy by cleaning out your cells with c60evo.com/YAFTV. Use that landing page, which is linked below, to go there. And anybody who contributes to the channel also gets 15% off. And the holiday sales have their own massive discounts, so you can't necessarily use those two codes together, but they're always good forever. And you can use them if you don't want to take, the sale packages. And I always give away 2 bottles of the capsules of the olive oil. I love the capsules because you can carry them around anytime you need a little boost of energy, or just how your schedule works, rather than having to carry liquids around, which I also love the liquids. But check it out below. This is, of course, going to the foundational building blocks of your cells to clean out your mitochondria, okay, and get your DNA and your entire body, your trillions of cells, including your neurons, protected and cleaned out from the garbage of all the toxic assaults that we are going through. And so check it out below. Merry Christmas, everybody. I will see you again soon. Have a fantastic celebratory weekend, and do take some time away from the news and the digital, and get with your family, get with real life, and praise God and celebrate his son, Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for watching. You are free, and I'll see you soon.